Everyone can review a video game, and that's a good thing. It is my opinion that everybody in the gaming community who completed a game, regardless of background or knowledge of the media, can and should be encouraged to write or record their own take on the matter. Now, I did not write, record, edit and post an essay just to repeat the same punchline. Yes, everyone can review a game, but the way such reviews are made and shared is important, not to mention their quality, and I'm here to address the shades in between. There is a difference between a review written for a journal and one self-published. There is a difference between a preview, a discussion and an opinion piece. There is a difference in quality and in quantity when it comes to how a review is made. Everybody can review, but let us discover how. First things first, roll the intro. In the past forever, I've noticed a bit of a contradiction among games aficionados like myself. Most hardcore players snob big review websites, believing them to be out of touch, and yet the reviews are always the focus of the discussion when a game is released, especially when these are controversial. The community is on fire when this or that game gets either an overwhelming positive grade or an unexpected negative note. In this video, I do not want to cite too many examples, since we're not here to address specific incidents. I know most of you are eager for me to say something like, Mixed got a 10 on IGN, ain't that wacky, but I invite you to follow my reasoning from a more conceptual and philosophical point of view. Despite the average player always mocking the mistakes and non-professionality of the decent establishment, one at a time surely does not stop to impress us with their wild tremendous takes. Why do we go back to them? We live in a digital age with everybody having a camera in their pockets ready to record. Why don't we all write reviews? The short answer is we do. The long answer is that the average player's review can also be bombarded with negativity, to a point where some are discouraged to share their take. It's all good and dandy when the opinions shared are mainstream, but as soon as an unpopular opinion is shared, other players will passionately reply back, and reply hard, even those who have not played the game. So, is the problem the reader, you and I, that wish to purchase an upcoming game or a classic but want to be informed? Well, of course not, but it does take two to tango. We do and often make the mistake of making assumptions on the scope and form of a review, regardless of who wrote it. All this combined and we end up with a mess where everybody is perceived as incompetent and blames the other, shouting the phrase I most detest: that person should not review games. This baffles me because I take it as an axiom, as a universal truth, that everybody can write or record a review of whatever product they consumed, including video games. A review, by definition, is an opinion shared by somebody who played the game. Some reviews claim to be more objective, but to be frank with you, dear viewer, no review is bias-free. Not the ones written by IGN, not the ones written by content creators, not the ones written by me. If reviews could be purely objective, we would have singularity, one review per game copied word by word, at most translated. Needless to say, that is not the case. Being this not the case, and thus all reviews being somewhat, if not entirely subjective, all reviews have a reason to exist, being them takes on a game from a unique perspective. If you are a veteran, if you're new to gaming, if you played other similar games, if it is your very first video game, it truly does not matter, since, as soon as you complete a game, you have formulated an opinion about it, and it is more than fair that you share such opinion freely. Of course, it is crucial to be upfront with whomever is reading. The context of the review is important. A review made by a fan of a series, for instance, will not focus on the same aspects as somebody new to the franchise. A review from a professional will focus more on technical details, while the review from the average player might focus more on their own vibes. But let us make some concrete examples. When I reviewed Like a Dragonation early this year, I was quite explicit in stating that this was my 10th something Yakuza game, and thus many core mechanics of the franchise were not addressed as revolutionary or surprising. The focus was instead shifted more towards another question. Out of all the Yakuza games, how does this one compare? If I were to review, say, Resident Evil 5, the sole Resident Evil game I've ever played, I would need to set up the review in a different way, one where it is explicit the fact that this is indeed my first Resident Evil game. I would have the right to review it of course, but I would inevitably focus on some aspects that a fan might gloss over, and not focus on elements such as lore and continuity like a fan would. Both my reviews will be valid, but they will be written from different points of view, some that may be more or less useful for the viewer. If anything, I always enjoy hearing the opinions of somebody new to a franchise or gaming in general, since they notice and spot elements I either ignore or take for granted. When I reviewed Neverness to Everness, I was doing it as a person who has not played other free-to-play gacha games, while my YouTuber friend Nino, who did a whole tier list of this type of games, was comparing this title to 50 other gacha experiences, giving the viewers another perspective and of course opinion. In my video, I addressed gacha game style more in general, since that intrigued me the most, while he addressed other elements such as the storyline and the characters. Both reviews are valid, despite coming from a different background. It goes without saying that freedom of expression inevitably results in garbage opinions, written in bad faith. Some people might criticize the game not for the game itself, but for its creators and their beliefs, something I find to be deplorable. It is good practice to avoid toxic comments that do not enlarge the understanding of the game itself. But going back to my reviews, sure, some could argue that I do have a general gaming background that elevates me to a higher level than the casual user, yet again I would disagree, and even if I was an expert, that would not give me much more authority than the average Joe or journalist. We have beaten around the bush too much. I believe we have to address gaming journalists, the quote-unquote experts we love to hate. Now, bigger publications are often the ones the vast public looks upon for clear judgment on a game. Despite people claiming to trust smaller creators with their opinions rather than big names, we all know that as soon as a game is released, everybody flocks to Metacritic to see the score given by the reviewers, not the users. The power these publications have is undeniably big, and as we all see every day, with great powers comes great responsibility. The conflict we have with this type of reviews is not that they are invalid by default, since again, anybody who has played a game has the given right to review it, but by the fact that they are inconsistent. Contrary to popular belief, there is no Mrs. IGN reviewing all games by herself. Rather, every website has a selection of various journalists who are required to review all sorts of games regardless of their personal interest. That is why these reviews feel incongruent and inconsistent, because the headline IGN review hides the fact that 100 reviews are written by 100 completely different people who do have a degree of freedom to insert their own judgment. The familiarity with the individual reviewer is often lost, meaning that there is no empathy and no attachment from the reader. That is why, in my opinion, critic reviews should be structured differently, not as a reflection of purely subjective enjoyment, but the technical quality of a game, since that one is a bit hard to deviate from. A game like Just Cause 3, for instance, is a game that I treasure and adore, one that I recommend. If I was a professional reviewer, however, my written verdict would require me to be critical of the various technical issues the game has, both in its design and its comparison to similar titles of the time. There, I could not afford to sweep under the rug these major issues, despite my own personal enjoyment. That is why people are often baffled with Pokemon reviews. It seems they are often written by people who have not played other JRPGs. This is fine if a casual user is open about it and only compares Pokemon to other Pokemon games, but from a professional, expectations are higher. Pretending Scarlet and Violet are not running on the same console of Breath of the Wild, Dragon Quest XI, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2, games even released years before, is unprofessional. The dishonesty does not derive from the fact that the individual reviewer might not have played or ever seen those other games before. Friction arises when the same publication did indeed review these other games, making comparisons inevitable. Why did X publication give a 6 to this game but an 8 to this other one is something you and I have said too many times. That is why I would firstly abolish numerical grades in general, something I always advocate for, and secondly would want to see professional reviewers divide their verdict in multiple categories rather than to have a single final punchline. What I mean by that is the following. If somebody casually asks me, did you like this game? I, as a casual user, can reply simply, yeah, it's a cool game, without justifying my final verdict. If, however, I'm reading an article from a faceless ghostwriter, I do not wish to know if that person survived with the game, but rather I wish to have an analytical report. The Order 1866 is a game that has objectively a good graphical component and an interesting setting. It, however, has objectively 2 short gameplay sessions in what is already a fairly short game. I said in my review of the title that the ensemble did not appeal to me, based on my personal taste, but a critic's review that ignores the positives or ignores the negatives to come to a personal vibe-based verdict is, in my opinion, not useful. So, going back to the original question of the video, can everyone review games? The answer is yes, of course even, but that does not pretend that a Steam review and a publication review holds the same weight and does the same responsibility. The reason why those mixtape reviews were so criticized is because this distinction was broken and people noticed. Personally, I will keep on doing reviews as I have done in the past years. As an independent singular creator, I will focus on my personal experience with games, not part of a greater group. There is no shame in writing for a smaller or bigger publication, but be aware of what we have addressed. Do not mix up the styles. Context is everything. Truly everyone can review, and it is my core belief that this is a right no matter the scenario. Of course, this entails that we will observe rage bait and dishonest takes on our favorite games, but to rely on a single group of people is in my opinion a bargain not worth considering. Publications do need to go back to a different type of reviewing than individual creators, since writing opinion pieces while holding a greater name is going to cause ever so more conflict within the community. If there is something objectively true out of this conversation, is that I will keep on making videos about review writing than actually writing reviews. Sorry, but not sorry. If you made it this far, I wanted to thank you one too many review writing times for watching today's video. People often forget the power of opinions, both professionals as well as amatorials, and it is important for all points of views to get the right spotlight. Are you going to start reviewing your favorite games? I wish you all a wonderful day, and until next time, arrivederci!